Hello. Yeah, my voice is jacked, and I believe it's gonna be jacked like this forever now. But hello, hello, hello. Is it me you're looking for? I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your smile. I don't know the words to the song, but I know it's sung by Lionel Richie. I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your smile. Hey, Anaya. How you doing? Okay, I'm glad you in here because I got a question. I'm contemplating on something. I think I'm gonna say a temptationette. You know how they had Gladys Knight and what was it? The Pips, the Pips and yeah, Gladys Knight and the Pips. No, it was the Diana Ross and the wait, wait. Diana Ross and the who was Diana Ross? Who was her backup singer? I know it's Gladys Knight and the Pips or the Pip. It it don't even matter. Okay, it don't matter. But I call myself Mrs. David Ruffin, so I'm considered a temptationette. Okay, I know y'all wasn't around when they had the temptationettes. That was before y'all time. But anyway, I'm glad y'all in here. Hey, Triple. But for real though, who was Gladys Knight? Because everybody had backup singers. I know somebody in the Supremes, Diana Ross and the Supremes. Thank you, Anaya. And Gladys Knight sang with were the Pips men or were they her? Everybody had backup singers. But I'm glad y'all in here because I got a question. Real talk. I want to react to a live, y'all. Now I listened to this live and it brought me to tears. But I feel like people, and I'm wondering if I should do this because I don't want people to feel like I'm playing victim about a situation. But I keep saying, it's like I keep telling y'all, that I went through some things behind the scenes, right? And everybody was pretty much there when a lot of stuff happened, like we was in the lives and stuff. But y'all, I'm gonna just say this. Psychological trauma is you don't really get a chance to actually see it up front, and I just gotta, I have to blame my age. I have to blame some things that were going on in my real life, and then when I say blame, I mean be accountable because when Triple, he's laughing because Triple was saying, uh, I'm trying not to cuss y'all. I'm trying to get away from cussing. It's hard. Hey, I said what I said. She was saying, people is desperate. You know, I'm a I'm a speak clean as possible. But one day I really would like to go you know, um, into some things because I've been pretty honest and I've talked about how in my real life I really had a lot going on and I needed a friend or I needed adult interaction. And I was listening to this live this morning, y'all, and it brought me to tears because I had started crying on this live and it was like, man, I was really breaking on the inside and I was hurting. And you know that whole situation was very real. And it's like I'm reading the chat and people was like, man, this is funny, but it's sad. And it's like, it's some things I can, look at it and laugh now, because there was a time where I would try to replay this particular live and I couldn't without crying or getting angry. And today I got emotional, but I also was laughing at some of the stuff that was being, said, because it's like, man, this is really stupid. But when a particular person got to talking, y'all, it was really breaking me. Not breaking me, but it was heart wrenching, because it's like I say, I'm 31, and I have 4 children, but I was hearing the little girl in me. I was hearing the how could you do this to me? I'm laughing, y'all, because it wasn't a how can you do this? That was my attitude on the panel, but that's how I felt. Like, what did I do to you? Or am I reading this wrong? It's like your intuition, I'm gonna say, when your intuition is screaming and you're confused and you're discombobulated, and it's really not, there's nothing funny about that. It's nothing funny about, you know, um heartbreak, betrayal. And I'm not gonna act like I've never, betrayed a person or, hurt somebody, intentionally, unintentionally. But if there, I'm gonna ask y'all this: is there a moment in time in your life, that if you could replay it just to go back and analyze it, would you? A moment that just like, I ain't gonna say brought you to your knees, but you were so emotional, and you were confused, and it was like so many things were hitting you all at once. If you could like press play and rewatch it, would you? Or would you just say, nah, like, I don't need them problems? I got a couple real life moments like that like when the memory comes up, you know I get this sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, whether it's due to my own behavior or what somebody, else did to me. But I'm gonna be honest, it's stronger when I think about my own behavior, and it's like something that I did to somebody. It's like it's a nauseating feeling in the pit of your stomach, like, man, and it's hard for me not to cuss y'all, because all I was just wanted to say was, man, I'm fucked up. That like, that's how I be thinking. That's how I think. And some people, say, you know, you got to forgive yourself. But I think, you can forgive yourself and remember. And it's like sometimes it's not even intentional. You could be watching something, cooking something, like a scent, you could make a gesture. Another person can make a gesture in a memory. It'll remind you of something. And it's like if you ask me, muscle memory, you know, like almost like a trigger, you know, um, trauma, you know, and it's like you can smell it, feel it, touch it. And when I'm listening to some of my old content or even other people's live streams where I'm on the panel, depending on the situation, I can remember everything, how I felt, what I was feeling, what I was thinking on the other side of that avatar. And when I say the avatar, I'm talking about my avatar. And it is triggering. I'm I'm getting a little misty eyed, thinking about some of the content that I've listened to, man. And it's humiliating. It's embarrassing, because I put a little pride in myself, for being, made it to 30. Now I'm 31. And it's like I was still a I'm still, fairly young compared to the people that I, spent most of my time around. These people got 20 and 25 years on me. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all got 25, 35. Y'all got some time on me. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, to think that I was even in the same mentality as them, to think that I was even in the same, you know, and I wasn't. And it's not a jab at me. It's not me talking about myself. What I'm saying is, you know, when you are around people of, mature age, whether it's a man or a woman, it can be a good thing or a bad thing because they can either be trying to uplift you, you know, and encourage you, you know, or they could be like predatory, and it's not predatory, like pedophile. It's predatory in, I'm a groom and shape you into little old me. Or even, give you the tools, and let me say this, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, being a big sister or a auntie or a mother figure to a person. But how are you doing that? Are you you know and see y'all, okay, so I'm gonna give y'all an example. I didn't decided to, walk with, Christ, okay, or allow Christ to carry me. Okay, let me say it like that. Because the footprints in the sand is actually Jesus walking and he carrying us, right? And I've heard many people say that, and I actually like that much better because only person I ever knew to walk on water, okay, was Jesus. And I'm sure he walked on the beach a time or two. But anyway, my point is that I feel like the lifestyle I've chosen is for Christ to carry me. And, you know, so I feel like, I gotta be connected with people, who, you know, can give me the tools, the motivation, the upliftment, that want, Christ to carry me. And it's really a personal choice. I don't have to, everybody that I'm connected to don't have to be like a super Christian, you know, but it's like if I'm gonna be close with you, in this time, you know, what are we doing together? And I'm only saying this because I'm listening to some old content, y'all, and I just want y'all to understand. I'm not coming for nobody. I ain't coming for the people in the basement sector. Okay, I ain't coming for them. Um, but I got a little emotional today because I listening to certain content. I realized how much more growing up I have to do. And I also even realized you know um you know Man, I'm trying not to cry, y'all. She said yes. Hey, long time. Take it and release it. That's a part of self-care and mental well-being. The feeling may come. I let it come and then release it. It's all a part of our growth journey that never ends. Take your time, Auntie Linda. Sometimes I'll go back to make sure I'm not crazy. One, because I'm so genuine. Anaya, Anaya, I'm gonna make you a part of the proverb meeting in the morning. Okay, ma'am. But listen, hold on, y'all. Huh. YouTube had I can't even say YouTube. There is a panel out here that when I listen to it, y'all, it brings me to tears. Somebody recently said, never mind, it don't matter. We make jokes about being traumatized by people on here. That's not funny, y'all. I'm not trying to take nobody joy away, okay? Or, make anybody sad. But a lot of y'all saw firsthand real trauma happening in real time. And, you can go get baptized. You can go, look, I went to Bible study today, y'all, but there are some things. And I'm talking about real trauma. I ain't talking about people that be coming out here with fake tears and lying on people, and I ain't talking about you, ma'am. Okay, I'm talking about people with real trauma. And I am one of them. And we've all had some sort of trauma in our lives, that kind of put a little, taint in our heart. And I'm gonna say taint. But this trauma, puts a lump in my throat, and it makes me feel shame. And a lot of time people say, well, why don't people speak out against their abusers, and why do they wait until? And it's like, because when you do, people call you crazy. When you show the receipts, people want to say, oh, the receipts are a lie, or oh, you just decided to get mad. And it's like, we here, and when I react to, because I'm gonna react to this live, y'all. I just don't know when I'm gonna do it. I just don't know when I'm gonna do it, because I know it's gonna piss a lot of people off. It's gonna piss a lot of people off. In fact, it's gonna piss me off all over again, and I might drop some damn tears, because it it's real. It's real when someone plays with your head and on your emotions, and people think that that's not real, or that makes you weak minded, or but narcissistic abuse is real. You may not recognize it in yourself, but when I went to therapy, I recognized, I had some narcissistic ways about myself, and it was like, but there are some people that thrive in narcissism, and they feed off others, in that narcissism, and it is mentally, emotionally, and spiritually draining, and it can kill you. It can kill you physically. It can kill your spirit. It can have you feeling, like, life, because it's mental. And there's like a couple YouTubers who, do biblical narcissism, and they'll take some scriptures and compare them to narcissistic behavior. And it's like, now, not now as in, today, right now, but it's like, I understand and can relate to why they say narcissism is demonic, because if you go to church, or you've been in a grew up in a biblical home, or a church home, or a home that believes in God, and believes in, like, the spirit realm and things like that, that the devil, Satan, Lucifer, the true enemy, in the spirit, messes with your mind. Like, that's where he starts. It's even, in the Bible, where it says, an idle mind is the devil's playground. So, if you're like, you can be young and, you know, um, impressionable, and you can be older and be impressionable. Having an impressionable spirit is not a bad thing. It could just be a part of who you are. Like, people can, how some people say, well, I'm not easily impressed. That's not a bad thing either. That's actually a good thing. If you ask me, that's I'm gonna say that that's a strong suit, right? You know, that's some type of armor. You know, but when you're impressionable, um, and you know you kind of soak up things, you know, like a sponge, or you know, if somebody plant a seed, you know, it'll grow. You know, that can be fun, tastic for a narcissist. You know what I'm saying? That could be fun. That could be it's an amusement park. You know, some people get on here and learn other people's triggers and use them against them for content out of spite or or just from a toxic place. Yes, not for a long time, and you know that happens in real life too, because you know people, you know, say they don't understand narcissists. You know, how can they be um so evil and this and that? And I blame the household. You know, when I talked to my mother about it, you know, I said, well, I told my therapist, you know, I blame y'all for, you know, my spoiled and, you know, entitlement ways. And she said, yeah, I blame us too. Because remember, we all have selfish, I'm gonna stop saying narcissists. You know, we have selfish characteristics. We have mean streaks. You know, nobody's above, you know, any human emotion. But some people live in that, you know, 24/7, 7 days a week. And okay, there's one YouTuber that but see, I found him on Facebook. I used to watch him on Facebook. Um, he does content about, you know, his narcissism, you know, and he kind of sheds light on how a narcissist will play with you. And then there's the other lady, Dr. What's her name? Ramanai. You know, she's a narcissistic therapist. So, you know, she shed light on, you know, those kinds of things too. And I've always watched them, y'all, just for fun, you know, just to go down like a rabbit hole. Or, you know, like the one guy, he makes a lot of jokes and stuff. And I put it to you this way. I never really applied any of this to my personal life, right? It was just like, this is what to look for. And you know, some people say you never know a narcissist until you encounter one, right? Like, you know, people can be like, you know, oh, such and such is such a good person. And her children might say, man, that lady is mean, you know, and she did us like this. And and the person, the child that's telling these people that believe that this mother is just so wonderful, they'll call the child a liar, or, you know, oh, they just jealous, or oh, they just disobedient. But there really are people out here, you know, who are kinder to strangers than they are their own family. And that don't necessarily make you a narcissist. That could just make you an asshole. But there are some people, like I even told a relative of mine story about my other relative over there on Urban Lounge podcast, and everybody was saying I was exaggerating. And I'm like, bruh, I witnessed this shit myself. Like I saw it. Like the whole family has talked about this, you know, but you know, everybody in the family don't call that person a narcissist. Some people just say they don't understand, or you know, they shouldn't have never got married, or they should have never had kids. And it's like, no, like this is a whole diagnosis. Like a therapist has diagnosed this person, and I'm telling these people's story, and people don't believe me. Hey, Miss Phoebe. Hey, then and now. You know what I'm saying? Like people really just don't believe that there are people that walk the earth and are trifling, you know, in the spirit, you know, or you know, you just exaggerate. It wasn't that deep, and it's like, bruh, no, it was that deep. And I just gotta be honest and say, I thank God, you know, that that's not my experience, you know, with really anybody. You know, I have, you know, I've with, you know, had experiences with you know, people mind fucking me. You know what I'm saying? Shit, I didn't mind fucked a person or two, just because, hey, I don't feel like telling the truth right now. I didn't lie, but some people thrive in it, and they even, like that's their whole character, you know, they wear masks all day, every day, and sometimes the mask slip, and some people see it and some people don't, because what I was saying was that in Bible study today, we was talking about carnal minds and spiritual minds, right? And I believe sometimes, a lot of us be seeing things spiritually and don't even know it. And some of us see in the spirit, and some of us just be seeing in our own spirit. And when I say our own spirit, it's like a familiar, a familiar spirit, like, I've seen this before, or I recognize this in myself. That's how I know this about you, or this is that's why I like you, because I know I can be the same way. I've said that, to people, I know I can, and I know I'm kind of all over the place, y'all, but I'm telling y'all something, okay? Just listen. For me, everything is spiritual these days. If I'm not getting along with somebody, that's the enemy trying to come between us. If somebody is, against me, that's the enemy, using somebody to come against me. If somebody is with me, that's either, it could be one or the both, that's the enemy using this person to deceive me, or this is God showing me, that he got my back, or he gonna send somebody my way to guide me in the right place, or to ride with me, whatever. Like, to me, everything is spiritual, to me, these days. And um man, y'all, I'm getting in my feelings. I don't give the enemy that much power. Yeah, I look at it like, you know I- when what was I saying earlier? So sometimes people think, people are lashing out because they hate a person. You know, I personally feel like I lash out when I'm hurt. I was reading the chat, y'all, from the live that I was looking at, and it was like the victim. Nobody was necessary. There wasn't one victim. There wasn't two Everybody in the situation was a victim of something, and everybody in the situation was a villain of something, right? But it was one person that I feel truly, was a victim in a situation, but because, they, you know, didn't do things the right way or the way that people expected them to do them, it made them a villain, and even with myself, I looked at people as villains, for not doing things, going about things a different way. And I can honestly say the reason why I say, I don't know if I want to react to this live is because I don't hate anybody, but I am angry. Still, I recognize. I'm like, man, I think I recognize I'm still a little angry, and it's not anger of hate. It's just like, what the fuck. But um, and yeah, because, God is not the author of confusion. The enemy is, the devil is. He loves confusion, which is why, when real feelings are involved, you don't mind fuck people. You don't do that. You do not play in people's face and with their emotions. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one thing to laugh and joke and kiki with a person, but when it's a serious situation and somebody is mind fucking you and they get off on it or they feel powerful, that's the devil. That's evil. It's something not right with that. I keep saying it's something not right with that. I already said what is evil. It is evil. People get mad when everything is evil. No, everything is not evil, but we do have to recognize evil deeds, you know, and it can't be something. And see, my thing is, people think manipulation, you know, it isn't that big of a deal. It's actually a powerful tool that the enemy uses, to deceive people. So if you have, taken on the armor of I can mind fuck the shit out of this person, or oh, I'm gonna play with their head, and it's a serious situation, where a person can become paranoid, or a person, don't know who to trust, or a person, is emotionally, kind of going, ain't no emotion, they're going to look crazy because it's like, wait a minute, I know this happened. I know this happened. And you got somebody telling them that didn't happen. That's not true. Child, that's evil. I don't feel it's the season or the time to do it, y'all. I do feel like I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I do feel it's the season and the time. I just don't want to do it. See, you see how I lied and then I came back and said I don't want to do it. And I'm not, because I don't want to re-trigger myself. And we should, let the past be the past and learn from it. Oh, I get what you're saying now. Yeah, our God is all powerful and the enemy is a defeated foe. That is true. She says, how about pointing out what's the good and the glory of God? Trust me. Yeah, Miss Linda, I think I'm one of them, I'm going to say, I think I'm one of them Christians, that, you know, we going to talk about it all. We ain't just going to talk about how good, because I ain't going to say that's phony, because it's not. I'm not saying nobody's walk with God is phony, but, people be going through some stuff, whether it's stuff they brought on themselves or things that, when life is just life. And I feel like people lose faith, you know. I can even say including me. Like sometimes when I'm in Bible, well, let me stop saying sometimes. When I first started going to church, y'all, and Bible study, I ain't gonna say turned off. I felt weird being around people that was so happy about God. It was weird. It was like, but then like when they would even be excited and happy and illuminated, you know, there would be tears. And they'd be like, God has brought me so far. And they'd start telling their testimony. He brought me from this, he brought me from that, you know, and they'd be crying. Not sad tears, y'all, but like tears of joy of what God has brought them from. And it was like, that's what I want. Yes, I want God to bring me through things that bring me to tears when I am rejoicing in God. So I don't feel weird no more. But I did, y'all. I felt so weird. It was like, why y'all so happy? uh, like for real. It'd be like, it almost felt fake. And like everybody was just putting on a show. But like I said, God showed me that these people aren't, happy. They are joyful in me. They ain't playing. They are praising me even in their struggles, y'all. And they say people do stuff when you in front of people, but when some people talk or give their testimony, depending on who you are, you can feel it. And now when I see everybody happy, I feel it. And it's like, yeah, I want to be happy like I know I'm not like there. It's like I want to get there. There's, certain things that, I do rejoice in God about. It's like, yes, thank you. You know, I guess what I'm saying is I just want that peace in God, where it's like I'm a super Christian. And I say super Christian, y'all, because it's really an inside joke between me and my mother. But that's what it's like I want to have that super Christian vibe, where it's like, come to church with me, you know, because that's how they are. They was when I started coming to church, everybody was welcoming and like, yes, you want to get to know God, you gonna have so much fun. And it was like, okay, y'all weird. Like, but it wasn't, I didn't get a fake and phony vibe. It was just like, why y'all so happy? And what's funny is, y'all, my sister, she recently joined us on Bible study, right, y'all? And listen. I just want y'all to listen. This was too funny. I called my mama and I'm like, she was in Bible study? And she's like, yeah. And my mama was like, so I'm like, give her the phone. So I'm talking to my sister, y'all, and I'm like, you got to get you a Bible. Like, look, y'all, I'm smiling. I'm so happy. Like, it was like, my sister is in church. Like, y'all, I was so happy. And me and my sister, she get the cracking joke. She like, bro, you acting like what's her name in Edward Scissorhands? Y'all remember Edward Scissorhands, the movie? And what's her name? Diane Lane. What's her name? Diane. Her name is Diane something. But the mother in Edward Scissorhands. And remember, she was going around selling Avon, and the whole neighborhood was just bright and sunny and shiny. And the wives in the neighborhood, was kind of creepy because they was just so nosy and so excited, for some gossip. But uh Winona Ryder, her mother was like so peaceful and so calm and so giving, and you can come stay with me and I'll cook you a meal and let me do your Avon. Do y'all remember that? And my sister said, "Bro, you acting like her." And I bust out laughing and I'm like, Mom, I'm like, remember how I used to tease you, tease y'all, you know, y'all super Christian. I'm like, y'all didn't turn me into a super Christian. I said, "Am I scaring you?" She was like, "A little bit." I was like, "But guess what? You're gonna become just like us." It was so funny, y'all. This girl was like, she was like, "Why are you?" Look, I was excited showing her all my Bibles, because it had been a minute since I talked to my sister, and I was like, "Look, I got this Bible, and look, I got this kind of Bible, and ooh, I'm gonna get you this Bible. It's purple." Like, and they were cracking up. And my sister, she know, like, I be messing with her and trolling her and stuff. But she was like, "Bruh." And I'm like, "Well, that's how I felt when I started first coming to." Uh-oh, hold on. Okay, my bad, y'all. My ears got to. But yeah, I was so excited. And long story short, y'all, I remember when somebody asked me on a panel, or asked, somebody else, was, is it like a gang? Is it like a group? And it was like, no, but it is. It's not a gang, but it is a group of people, who come together, and honor and, want to learn and want to, teach other people, the goodness of God. And that's what I like. I enjoy Bible study more than I enjoy church because, it's like I just told y'all the experience, Bible study, it'd be like, you know, and I even, I didn't accuse my mama. I'm like, "You telling my business again?" But she's not. Okay, the Holy Spirit has been convicting me in a lot of whole different ways, and that ain't funny either. She said, "You will experience those tearful moments when you know that nobody but an all-powerful God could have brought you out of a situation." And Miss Mimi, I've had a moment like that. I have, but I wasn't excited. I was kind of like just telling a little bit, like, I know God is real, and it'll bring you to tears when you really telling your own story. Whether you're telling it in detail or just a little bit, it'll bring you to tears. And honestly, y'all, I don't like crying. You know, Tears are like weakness to me. I feel like, I'm very vulnerable when I'm crying, and I get embarrassed by it, and I don't know how to work on that other than to just stop crying, you know. I feel like, I'm still fighting my flesh, when I know I be fighting my flesh when I'm be on the verge of tears, and it be like, I mean, my spirit, when I be on the verge of tears and I hold them in, because it's like, I ain't gonna get nobody the satisfaction. I do it anyway, but why y'all think them lives be on private? I don't like, stop looking at me crying. Okay. I don't like I don't like I don't like crying. I don't think you're weak for crying. I just think it's a weakness when you're so hurt, or so mad, or you just and you cry when you're hurting. Because when I'm hurting, y'all, I cry and then I get mad because it's like, see, now then, I'm weak again. I remember a time, y'all, which was not that long ago, where I purposely would cry by myself, and I wouldn't cry in front of nobody because I didn't want nobody to see me being weak. And the last couple of weeks, I've been feeling like I need to start doing that again. But I know that that's the enemy, trying to make me all hard, because I had made peace with, it's okay to cry. And when I, started crying in public, on here, and crying behind the scenes again, I started to feel weak, like people had got the best of me again. And that's what I don't like about tears. I feel like, it means you've got the best of me. I've shown my vulnerability, like, oh, I love you, or I care about you, or, I'm not this kind of, like, almost pleading to be seen and heard. That's just how I feel about it. When you've been hurt, and we've all been hurt, but when you've been hurt, you try not to put yourself in a situation where you can be hurt again, right? And that's why I say, that's a little bit of my narcissism, because sometimes I'll put myself in a mind frame of can't nobody hurt me, or can't nobody get the best of me. And when it does, I be in tears because I've convinced myself I'm superhuman all of a sudden, and I don't know where this comes from. Other than I reflect on the situation and be like, you know what, I'm not gonna let that happen again. So when I cry, I feel like it's the other person. If I cry on a situation, and a person is involved where it's like, something going on, I feel like the other person has got the best of me. Kind of like a bending of the knee, or I surrender, and I don't know why I'm like that. So that's why, I get mad and be like, fuck them tears. I'd rather just be angry and kick your ass than for you to see me out here. Oh, you hurt me. And sometimes I cry and still wanna fight, because now I'm even more pissed off because now I want to fight you and I can't. I don't understand emotions. I don't understand my own emotions. I'll say that. I don't be understanding how somebody can, and I've talked about this in therapy. Like, I don't be understanding, how I be mad at a person, and still want them to like me. Like, what type of shit is that? Or a person could do me wrong and still want. It's like I don't be understanding. But now I'm in a place where I have better understanding. So let me stop speaking as if it's present tense. It's actually more past tense. You know, I understand a lot. The Bible tells us to guard our heart. You know, not that doesn't mean be a mean person or be hard hearted. It tells us to guard your heart. And it tells us to guard our hearts because people are going to be people, and life is going to happen. Things are going to hurt us. And sometimes those things can be things like death, you know, betrayal, you know, trauma from your childhood, trauma in your marriage, trauma at the workplace. And if you ask me, all of this he say, she say on YouTube is something you should guard your heart from. Something I should have guarded my heart from. Believing that people, love me or even like me just as much as I loved and liked them. You know, um, Believing that people had my best interest. You know, she said, "Do you think it could be your ego?" You're absolutely. I'm still, I'm human, Miss Mimi. I think I'm too good for a lot of stuff. That's not the truth, though. I'm definitely think I be convincing myself such and such couldn't hurt my feelings if they tried. Now, truthfully, some people can't hurt my feelings anymore because they didn't woe me out. They didn't woe me the hell out. Okay, I didn't been back and forth in my mind. I've been, well, maybe they didn't mean it this way, and maybe it wasn't like that. But actions speak louder than words. Maybe they didn't mean to. And truthfully, sometimes people don't mean to do, hurtful things that they do. And some folks can do that, can mess up with you one time. But when it's repetitive or even a determined I'm gonna play in your face, baby, ain't no convincing me no different. As long as you allow me to play in your face, I'm gonna play in your face. And I allow people, to do that. So, like I said, I don't totally blame everybody else. I blame myself because, you know, and like I already said, I'm gonna blame age, and me, learning and wanting acceptance and from certain people or wanting to be loved by an individual. You know what I'm saying? I think everybody in their life a time or two have sought love in all the wrong places, and in return, they got, and that's how people stay in abusive relationships, looking for love in a place where ain't no love, you know. Wait, hold on, can y'all hear me? Could y'all hear me all this time? Okay, yeah, y'all can hear me. But where it's there's no love, but it's convenience, or they're out of convenience, whatever they're getting out of it, stroke their ego, make their funny special spots feel good, money, whatever, attention, time, whatever. Like I said, I don't think there's one person on earth that ain't never not did somebody wrong, but some people are intentional with it. They do throw people away. It's called a discard, discard. They call it the narcissist discard. When they throw you away, act like they ain't never knew you a day in their life, while still telling everybody, I love you, you know, I care about you. Yeah. Then here on YouTube, it's, oh, in private and in public. But that's the whole. What's so crazy is, y'all, I had to unlearn some behaviors that I grew up in as a child. You know, I'm still unlearning them. My mother is a wonderful coach. She'll tell me, because we have one thing I love about my mom. She don't mind deep talks, whether it's about her or what somebody else did wrong, as long as, at the end of that deep talk, you get something out of it, right? And I'm not saying it just be these long, drawn out conversations. What I'm saying is, when we talk about our past, you know, accountability, you know, but anything that she felt she did wrong or something that I'm trying to get out of, she encourages me, to be the best mom, but also to say, okay, yes, that's what you went through. That's what, we went through, but that doesn't mean, you just let your kids do whatever. And I'm glad that, I have that relationship with her because at first I didn't see it her way. And when I say her way, which was that, yeah, we might have went through some things, but that don't mean, you just let your kids walk all over you, because I was letting that happen. I was being, new age, gentle parenting, and then wondering why KJ think it's okay to draw pictures on my walls. I ain't never drew no pictures on my mama wall. What's wrong with these kids? What about maybe God is doing the separating because he knows that person is a hindrance to you? Yeah, Miss Mimi, facts. She say right, Vaughn's reality. Oh, I love when y'all call me Vaughn's reality. Cause y'all didn't call everybody call me Vaughn now. But it's okay. I don't mind it. It's more personal because I am Vaughn, Keyvon, Keyvani, Kiki. Okay. And God will separate you from, people that you love. He's a jealous God, and if you love somebody more than you love him, that could be your husband, your children, your mother, your father, a friend, a cousin, an uncle, a pastor. He will he throw some he will allow the enemy to throw some monkey wrenches up in there, get your feelings hurt. Now that I do believe. Yeah, I almost cried the other day when I saw Beyonce almost died, y'all. And then I got mad at her. Cause she up on the stage talking about some, I know if I fall, y'all will catch me. I said, if you don't be up there thinking the good Lord you ain't fall and bust your face open, I still think it's a possibility that it was a hoax. Cause she was in Houston and they be, tipping on fofos. Some people say they be praying for her and her soul salvation. I got a confession to make, y'all. I be kind of afraid to pray for people and their soul salvation because I know that once you start praying for, God to work on somebody, things will start to happen in their life. And I don't be wanting nothing bad to happen to nobody, y'all. I got problems, okay? This is why I don't whoop my kids. Cause I don't want to be hurting nobody. But guess what? When they get to acting crazy, I get to pop pop, spare the rod, spoil the child. My son was acting up, y'all. Ooh, he was I'm talking about my oldest boy, y'all, JC. He was acting a fool. I told his little butt up, and I ain't had a problem about him since, y'all. It's been about I want to say a month. He called himself getting mad and want to throw something because I told him to clean up something. And y'all, when I tell you, I told that little boy up. I said, don't you throw nothing else. I ain't beat him, y'all. I ain't do all that. I think I popped him maybe 4 times because, he's 7. I try to do the age, well, you 7, so I'm going to pop you 7 times. But I just pop, pop, pop. And I have not had a problem out of him since. Sometimes you have to remind people not to play with you. You know what I'm saying? And I was bad when I was a kid. I would, I needed constant reminders because I was a constant torture. Me and my siblings, we was just bad. But I realized, my grandfather, he asked me, you used to get whoopings, didn't you? And I said, yeah. And I said, but I would still do bad stuff. And I said, well, and depending on what I did, what I got a whooping for, I might not have did that again. And that's true. Some things I did, I just didn't do again. It was like, mm. And I realized that, when I, because I was sitting back thinking, I say, wait a minute, JC, I ain't had to yell at you. I ain't had to threaten you. I ain't had to do too much of nothing. Because he been listening. I said, I still don't believe we should be whooping kids, though, y'all. I don't like it. Facts, Mimi. Vaughn, don't ever change. We know your heart. The people that matters knows it. My love. Everyone, I'm finna finish Squid Games with hubby. I'll be listening until then. Okay, Anaya, love. Y'all enjoy. I gotta watch Squid. Jim tried to get me into Squid Games. Jenny likes it. I don't think she should be watching it though. But my baby, she like anything her daddy like. He like anime. She like anime. She's into Squid Games. Miss Mimi, what you in here saying? You have to learn to trust the process even when it doesn't feel good to your flesh. Amen. I don't like the process. Look, y'all have tuned in to Von's reality, and I am going to be Von from this moment on, y'all. It feels good to just sit on my channel and talk to y'all. It's been a long time since I done just did this. It's been a couple weeks. Well, it's been almost 2 months. She say, I love y'all unit. Vaughn, Mimi, and Too Strong. I'm finna call y'all the lights. Lord have mercy. We look, you got John Frank calling us the anointed ones. You out here calling us the lights. Vaughn was talking about groups earlier. I'm screaming. Group chats. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, the Lord is working on me. Cause baby, I tried to unprivate all my old content. I was finna upload text threads and woof. Here go the group chat that she keep lying about. Uh, and y'all know what's so funny? She said, "Too strong will believe what she wants to believe, no matter what I say, and so do you. I've done it too." I think what happened. I'm gonna say this in the messy and drama and beef sectors. It's a lot of leaning to your own understanding. There is a lot. It's a whole lot of emotions and confusions and drugs and alcohol and sex and jealousy and envy and I want what you got and I'm gonna bring you down. It's just all biblical. It's the spirit realm in war. Like for real. It's just a lot. I'm serious, Anaya. It is. It's like what the hell? Y'all remember that night I was doing shots with Bam and I just went the hell off and woke up the next day and everybody named Mama was outside on me. Y'all remember that? Me and Latanya, Latanya hit the link like, hold on, who you talking to? And I'm like, oh, I'm talking to you. It's just a whole lot. She say last night was a lot, but baby, I'm back. Yep, last night I slipped. I'm screaming. Anaya, I ain't gonna lie. I watched the replay and I was cracking up. Both of y'all funny as hell. Y'all crazy. Hey boo. Let's read the text messages together, sister wife. I'm like, these y'all is crazy. Y'all, you got to laugh about this stuff, okay? We got to laugh. She said you snapped that night. Look, J4K was on my ass. Sip was in the state gang. Okay, I was getting text messages from behind the scenes. Don't you talk to me like that forever again. It's like, you know, I ain't gonna lie, I had an alcohol moment. And it was fun. I had fun tearing everybody up. And then the next day I had fun playing victim acting like I ain't know what happened. And then I even had more fun getting back at everybody. All right? Admit your wrongs. Admit it. It's not gonna kill you. Laugh about it. Know that you are forgiven if you really, mean it with your whole heart. Laugh about it. Don't feel shame. Everybody did something weird before. On the internet, in text message in real life, on the couch in real life, in the bedroom. Okay, everybody want to worry about who's sleeping with who. Shut up! I'm tired. Y'all, I really be laughing. Like, come on now. Y'all stay telling me, Vaughn, you ain't even lived long enough. Vaughn, you still got so much to learn. This be coming from people that used to love me. And it's like, okay, so if I'm capable of all these things at 30, I know you did it too. And some of y'all still doing it in your 50s and 60s. Want to talk about folks cheating and sleeping and creeping. And y'all still doing it. Y'all, somebody told me, now this is in my real life, okay? Somebody told me in my real life that they had a 25-year affair. I said, I didn't know you could cheat that damn long. I promise you I didn't. I promise you I didn't. It's people that really, you know, and it's okay. I get it. But it's like, bruh, we all have done some weird stuff. Everybody ain't got exposed for it. Everybody ain't because it's like some people, like that one girl, y'all, that one lady on TikTok who's over here on YouTube. She did a confession story time about how she had an affair early in her marriage and she slept with the man one time. And people be dragging her. And she still carry on in her TikTok with her husband and her child and kids. They happy, they good. And it's like, no, everything isn't meant for Everyone, you know. And yes, if you gonna open that door and tell your business, people gonna talk about you. But why do we y'all be and I mean dragging the skin off folks, acting like you ain't never done nothing? I don't understand that. She said, wait a minute, 25 years? Anaya, 25 years? 25. I said, what the? I didn't know you. I promise y'all. You know, I promise you. I did not know you could cheat on somebody for that long. I kid you not. I really did. I had no idea and not get caught. She said, I know somebody who been doing that for 19 years. Exactly. You ain't got to be, in the church to be a cheater. It's people that live their everyday life. And cheating is wrong, period, whether you believe in God or not. Cheating is cheating. Yeah, I'm laughing because that's the truth. Everything ain't in the Bible. Some things, well, I ain't gonna say everything isn't about the Bible and religion. Some things just about morals, And I know people who, don't believe in God and, they haven't done up a lot of stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I don't trust them. Cause how Jesus ain't saved you from nothing? Oh, now I don't trust nobody like that. Mm-mm. You feel like them people that be like, I don't need to, go to church to be a good person. I don't go to church. I don't need to read my Bible. I don't need. Wait, hold on. You don't know nothing about Jesus. You don't know nothing about God, and you expect me to think I'm supposed to trust you? Y'all know that. Honestly, y'all, it be white folks that talk like that. I am a good person. I pay my bills. I feed my family. I don't lie, cheat, or steal. What type of sins you got? What type of sins you got? It's one thing to go to church, you know, because I feel like everybody goes through a time in their life where they stop going to church. Especially when you've been in church your whole life, right? Or yeah, especially when you've been in church your whole life. But them people that like, just think they all good and ain't got to be saved from nothing. I'm scared of you. Oh, you don't call on God for nothing. You don't call on God for nothing. You ain't praying and talking to Jesus about nothing. I don't trust you. Mm-mm. It's something ain't right. Mm-mm. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Yeah, a lot of people act from past trauma. Don't acknowledge God. Don't pray over their food. Even folks that just, don't even pray over. Look, you don't pray over your food. I'm side eyeing you. Look, Rashid had me cracking up. He said, I pray over something to drink. I said, oh, look, that's new to me. Pray over something to drink. But I'm for real. I don't trust nobody that don't know nothing about no Jesus or no God, or they know about it, but they don't call on Jesus and God for nothing. That's fake. That's not real. I don't trust you. You ain't been through nothing in life where you was on your knees praying. You was hold your Bible. You had some holy oil in your hand. I don't trust you. Cause baby, you dangerous. If you going through all this life and all this stuff that we go through and ain't never had to call on the master. Mm-mm. I'm scared of you. Baby, look, I said what I said right. Shoot. I'm calling on Jesus. I don't know what y'all do. I'm scared of them folks. Hold on, y'all. Somebody send me a message. Hold on. Oh, that's my uncle. That's my stepmom too, y'all. My family, y'all, we be up. I know my uncle work overnights. We be in this group chat clowning. Look, look, look. There, see y'all. Vaughn love group chats. I mean, everybody got a family group chat. He Aggie. He never do that. He probably was sipping. And Anaya, shut up. Don't be telling on him like that. Anaya, you stupid. But no, for real. Shoot. We all done been through something we didn't have. I know one time, y'all, I was in Target when I was like I think I was about 12, 11, and I was in there stealing, y'all. I had all my siblings with me and my cousins, and I was getting them stuff for Christmas. I'm like, what y'all want? I was in there switching tags and all types of crazy stuff. And y'all, that security guard, y'all, he's this big black security guard, looked like he's gonna take me down. And his little walkie talkies and stuff started going off, and he was holding his earpiece and he was staring dead at me. And y'all, I got to praying. I was like, Lord, if you get me out of this, I never steal out of a store ever again. And I didn't, y'all. I never took nothing out of no. I didn't switch not one more tag. I was like, I ain't finna get caught. Child, I was like, oh, my mama gonna kill me. I got my little brothers and sisters up in here, my little cousins. Y'all, we had went to IHOP. We had, it was around Christmas times, around Christmas break, and they had gave us gift cards to go to IHOP and Visa gift cards, to go shopping and stuff. And I had gathered up all the kids because I'm the oldest, and it was like, come on, I'm gonna take y'all shopping, and y'all, my brothers and sisters, my cousins, they was having a good time. We can get this, keep on, we can get that. I'm like, yeah, get whatever y'all want, and I would take the expensive tag off of it. I was doing this in Dollar Store and Target, and I want to say it was Family Dollar. So then when I got to Target, Target got all the nice stuff. So you got to be a little smarter. You can't take no, 39.99 and turn it to 299.99. Okay. But y'all know what I'm saying, 299 or whatever. But I switched a couple tags, and I'm like, yeah, y'all get whatever y'all want. I get to that register, y'all. He was staring dead at me. And I know I'm like 11 or 12. I wasn't no teenager yet. I was almost there though. And I'm telling y'all, I bowed my head and I said, Lord, if you get me out of this one, I won't steal nothing from nowhere else. I'm so like that, y'all. If I walk out the store and you got the water and the pop at the bottom of it now, I will take that bad boy back in there so fast. And when I said I never steal again, I meant it. You not know. And I even know some people. Well, I ain't gonna say some people. I know this story of this lady my mother was telling me about. And she said the lady, every time she would do something, she would pray and ask God, if you get me out of this, I won't do it again. And she would do it and do it and do it. Lord, if I do, she said, lady, keep doing it. I ain't gonna hold y'all. I'm afraid to do that. I will say I do things and I don't ask for forgiveness, and I just, chalk it up to whatever, I repent for it later. But see, Miss Alice, pastor, uh, you know, the sisters in the church, okay, folks on YouTube, you know, have reminded me, that you may not get the chance to do that. So, I just try to, be like, Lord, help me not do stuff like this, you know. You might check out. What you say, Anaya? I'm crying because I was in Kmart with my homegirl. She went into the dressing room and filled her bag. Child of security said, do you know her? I said, no. Oh, Anaya, you wrong. Ah, I was 11 and 12, y'all, switching tags. Okay. I had picked it up from my aunties, because some of them used to be boosters and stuff. And, some of them, that's what you do. You switch the tag. And I told you I've always hung around people that was older than me. So, when I would get with my friends and, my siblings, I shoot, let me teach you a trick. And I know some people still switch tags to this day. I don't. I'm scared, y'all. It's like, no, I know I'm gonna go to jail. Look, if I ain't got it, I ain't got it. That's why people used to call me a lame when I would hang out, when I was a teenager. Cause I didn't do stuff like that. It was like, I almost got caught once, and I told the Lord I wasn't gonna do it again. And y'all, this was before I got rebaptized, like now in my 30s. But I would know it would be like, But see, I got caught up in other stuff. Now them stories I can't tell y'all. That's too personal. Y'all don't need to know me like that. But yeah, Vaughn was I'm gonna say Vaughn was a Rolling Stone. And yes, I had fun. I feel like, when you young, you know, you want to do whatever, you just want to get in whatever type. And see, I would be in grown folks type of trouble. You know what I'm saying? You know, I would get in grown folks type of trouble. What the hell was you thinking? What was you doing? You know. And honestly, y'all, I ain't even had no explanation half the time. I would just be honest and say, well, I wanted to. And it wasn't a because I wanted to. It was just like, well, I thought it was a good idea or it sounded fun or, okay, well, let's try it. I was honest. And sometimes I didn't say anything at all because I'd be so shamed. So I just be crying. And then, my father, stop all them fake ass tears. Them tears wasn't fake. I was embarrassed. I was shamed. Shame of myself. She say from Kmart. I was a church girl. My reputation was impeccable. Oh, Naya, you are a PK, ain't you? So you was outside. Or I'm going to say an evangelist kid, okay? Anaya, I snatched a Pez candy dispenser when I was super young, and my father said he was going to have them announce it on the speaker. Never again. See? I was scared. I just knew if that man if that security guard would have caught me, y'all, I would have been in jail. He looked mean and ready to throw some little black kids in the jailhouse. And I knew my mama was gonna leave me there because she told us if you end up in jail, don't call me, I call you. And I never understood that. How the hell I'm gonna wait for you to call me and I'm in jail? I ain't understand that. But yeah, I must say I got caught up in other places, and I kept all that in the dark. What she say? Oh no, not that. No, there I'm crying. See, pops wasn't even playing when the church folk find out. That's oh yeah, I messed around and finna find out, mom. Yeah, my mama was a pastor and evangelist. Yep, and I use evangelist kid. PK, you pastor kid. I had to take a deep breath, y'all. Reminiscing. I think everybody has their golden time of day for whatever road or path they want to take in life. And I think I'm a little misunderstood by my church family and even my mother that I'm still a firm believer in free will, okay? And everybody ain't got to be super Christians, because once you're a part of a certain group, that's how you should, you shouldn't stray away from that. And honestly, y'all, I don't feel that I'm straying away, from church or community in church. It's just that, I enjoy my freedom, as a person. And I feel that, just because I chose this path, doesn't mean I got to beat everybody else up with it, or, and I'm not saying that that's what they're teaching me. I'm just still me. And, I desire balance in that, where I'm comfortable in it, because right now I'm a little uncomfortable because it's like, how can I be a child of God and still, exercise freedom of, you know, will, you know, and accepting people for who they are, my children, my husband, my friends, you know, because, when you learning something new and you also living by it, you kind of expect other people to, it's like your standards, you hold other people to the standards that you set for yourself, and it's like, and I think all of us do that just naturally, just a little bit. But I feel like, as I get older, based on what I've been, because y'all always hit my link, when you get older, Vaughn, and I believe y'all that one day I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna just be me. No, it ain't gonna be no in between or nothing. It'll just be like, this is who Kivon is, But God has given us all free will, and that's why I think He's fair and just, because He allows, us to live our lives the way we want to live them, and that's what I love about God, because some people look at religion and spirituality as a trap, you know. I kind of consider myself a flower child. My mother was a flower child, she's all about freedom, you know. I don't think any of us should be in bondage. And that's why I say, you know, God is not the author of confusion, because He doesn't want us to be in bondage, with my bad, y'all. He doesn't want us to be in bondage with Him. He wants us to be willing to join Him, willing to fight, you know, the battle um in the spirit with Him, you know. It's not a, if you don't join me, and that's why, because I had a conversation today where it was like, well, do you believe God loves us unconditionally? And I'm like, yeah. I just feel that our behavior is what's unacceptable, you know. Like, He love you regardless. He love you when you're a dog mess. He love you when you a hot mess. He love you, you know. But what He desires is for us to get right. You know what I'm saying? Right. He does not want us to be unhappy. Exactly. Yeah. You know, he wants us to be at peace. He doesn't want us to be fighting and, always upset about something, or, being tormented and stuff. So, I just believe that some of our behavior, ain't no some of our, Any behavior in the Bible that he don't like that. And he don't want us doing stuff like that. And that's what makes, our behavior unacceptable. But he love you no matter what you're doing. He just wants you to get right, in the spirit. That's what I believe. I strongly believe that, you know. She say the world will keep trying to pull you away from self. Gotta stay grounded and keep going within. Yeah. And Bible study today, y'all. They was the question was the pastor asked us, what do we Okay, y'all, my bad. That was my auntie, y'all, and her best friend. She said, that's why I think, okay, hold on, wait, let me read y'all comments. Yes, I said what I said. The world will keep, okay, I read that. That's why I thank God for my mom, Rudy, and grounding me in God. It doesn't show on this app. I'm going to do everything that I can to walk by her teachings and what God set in stone for me. Okay, I told y'all to hold on. Good night, loves. Have a blessed night. This was an awesome live. Okay, Anaya, God words walk. Night, y'all. Good night, y'all. But yeah, so in Bible study, y'all, Pastor asked us what did we think, heaven looked like, or, what do we imagine? I think it was what do we imagine heaven looks like. And I told him, like, well, I see a bunch of clouds, and so, he asked me to further, elaborate. And I'm like, everything isn't, the throne isn't on top of clouds, the people on top of clouds, I'm on top of clouds, everything on top of clouds. And I told him, in today's time, because, he asked, do you hear people preaching, about heaven? And I said, well, in today's world, I more so hear more about how hell isn't real. And I even told him, like, I was saying that hell, can be a state of mind, because I was, leaning away from hell as a place, but hell is real, right? And he was like, right. And I said, I know you asked about heaven, but, I'm going someplace. And I said, well, the enemy, his greatest trick is to deceive us into believing that he doesn't exist. So, you know, that's why I don't think there's too much talk about heaven, because, we kind of living in times where hell, is no longer a place. And I started to, kind of think about that, like, everybody else get to talking, everybody else giving their perspectives. And I'm like, you know, hell is real. Okay. I do believe hell is real. I also believe, you can be in hell on earth. It could be a state of mind, the way that you're living, you know, um, but hell is real. And I even told him, I was like, yo, I had a boyfriend who described his heaven, with his sins, and I said, in fact, most men describe heaven as having a bunch of women and cars and money and, cigars and alcohol and, yeah, everybody started laughing, but I'm being serious. I'm like, but to me, that's, where I am now, it's like I feel like we describe our heaven, as more like a comfortable hell when you saying, heaven to me is this, that, and the third. And it's like, wait, 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 wait. That ain't what the Bible says. you know. Um, I do believe you can create your own hell too, with your actions, and your mindset, and like I said, your lifestyle, you know. People be testifying and they say, I was living in hell, you know, because the devil, he gets in your mind, you know. Hey, hold on, y'all. Look, everybody want to call me. Everybody, hold on, y'all. Okay, I'm back, y'all. That was Jim coming in. The kids are gone, so I guess I'll give y'all a couple more minutes and then I get off. But um, yeah, I feel like there was a time where I was living in a hell mentally, emotionally, and physically. Some people have even told me, I think I've even read it, in the Bible that it was the devil, tormenting me. He had access to me because of my own sins and indiscretions, and the list goes on. And we even talked about, what an authentic Christian looks like and what it is. And y'all know I got all in, all like, oh, here go Jesus up in my business. But I didn't tell the lady, but she I have a feeling that God, was speaking from her to me. Cause I don't talk to this lady. I don't tell this lady none of my business. But she said a couple things and I'm like, oh, she talking to me and she don't even know she talking to me. Or maybe she do know she talking to me. I don't know. I don't know what Jesus be doing to people. I don't know. But there's a elder in our church, and the pastor was talking to her and he was like, to us, you are an authentic Christian. And he asked us, what does authentic mean? And he said, what does authenticity mean? And you were like, be your true self, be who you are. And I was thinking, it's a whole lot of talk, on YouTube. Of course I ain't say nothing. I don't always share what's going on YouTube. When I'm giving my experiences. Sometimes, I be thinking about other stuff. But this particular night, I was thinking to myself, a whole lot of, talk about what a Christian is and what a Christian ain't on YouTube. And there's maybe a handful of people, that are authentic, and then there's a handful of people that are considered inauthentic, including myself, right? And I was thinking like, and she even used some scriptures to back it up, to study to show yourself approved and, keep his commandments and then the beatitudes. And I'm like, man, you know, I'm like, man, spirituality is deep, whether you in spirit in whether you're practicing in light or in dark. It's heavy stuff. It's real because we are spiritual beings, and whatever we align our spirit to and with, or um practice to, commit ourselves to, um you know it's gonna follow you everywhere. You can't run from you know your calling. You can't run from the truth. You can't run, and you definitely can't hide. Once you signed a contract. And I feel I've signed my a contract, with God in the spirit, with my spirit, to walk, you know. Let me stop saying walk. To be carried by Jesus. Okay? Because it just keeps showing up everywhere, on the internet, on TV, on Facebook, at the grocery store, when I'm asleep, when I open my eyes in conversations, whether it's in private or in public, it just keeps showing up. And none of us are perfect. But there is a huge difference between a mistake and a decision. A mistake is something you make in the heat of the moment. A decision is, if you ask me, it's thought out. And I feel that we decide and we choose our behavior every day. And that's why I want to read a proverb in there because, I want to choose how I'm going to act. And, they say the Bible is our daily bread. We feed our spirit with the word, and so that we can be a little different, you know. But y'all, I'm getting tired. And my auntie want me to call her back. And make sure y'all tune in on Monday when I don't know if it's gonna be on this channel or my other channel. I think by Monday my channel won't be struck anymore. And if not, I'm gonna just do it over here. But we're gonna do a proverb a day with Vaughn, you know. It's gonna be, I wanted to do it early in the morning, but I think I'm gonna start around, you know, I don't know, 11:30, 12 o'clock. I'm not sure yet, but I do want it to be early enough for people, you hear the word. If you crack your Bible open with us or your study Bible or your journal or whatever, we can choose our behavior for the day. Because I wake up pretty early, you know, and then I go to sleep again in the afternoon. But yeah, so y'all make sure y'all hit the like button and thanks for joining me in this wonderful live. And you know what, y'all? I have decided, you know, I said what I said. You so funny. Um, I don't think I'm gonna react to that live, y'all, because it's traumatizing. It is. And it's gonna stir up emotions and I don't want people in the chat, I'm sorry, Vaughn, and oh my God, and folks dragging. I'm not going, like I said, some things are a mistake and other things are a decision. And I know that it would be a sound decision to strike up that live. Now I'm gonna say this. If I change my mind in the next couple months, don't hold it against me. Okay? Because you just never know. You just never know. But honestly, I think it's gonna do me more damage than good. It's not even about other people. It'll do me more damage than good. Trauma is trauma. And, I thank God it's certain things in my life. I don't have the play button to rewind and revisit. Because, baby, excuse me. Right, good. Yeah, make better decisions, Vaughn. Making better decisions, y'all. I use YouTube as kind of like a therapy session, y'all. I just like to talk. I know I need to probably go ahead and just start. Look, I'm gonna go ahead and make some appointments with my therapist. You got some availability? Because I got some things I need to, reevaluate. He gonna be like, Lord have mercy, this child. But y'all, I'm gonna go. I'll talk to y'all later. I love y'all. And you know, be blessed. I'm waiting on. She said, "Don't let the devil ride." Right. I'm gonna flatten his tires. Oh, oof! Almost called him an old coon. You old black demon. But yeah, yeah. I'm gonna see y'all later. Y'all enjoy y'all night. I hope y'all enjoyed the live. Don't forget to hit the like button. And you have had a word from Vaughn. I'm gonna start calling these segments when I just be ranting y'all a word from. I'm telling y'all, I'm coming up with content. Okay. Hey, Mookie, how you doing? You came in at the last minute. Matter of fact, I gotta give you a wrench. But I'm gonna give it to you when I get off, Mookie. I'm gonna give you your wrench. But I'm gonna see y'all later. Mookie, comment on my page on this channel so I can give you a wrench. Cause my chat ain't gonna come back up right away. Wait, hold on. I ain't even got to do all that. Hold on, I can do it right now. But yeah. So if you got a word from Vaughn, a proverb with Vaughn, hopefully you ain't got to start no read you down with Vaughn segment. Okay. But I do that too. uh Wait, can I do it from this channel? I might have to. Okay, y'all, I'm back. But yeah, good night. I love y'all and see y'all. And once again, don't forget to hit the like button. Okay? Thumbs me up. She said you can do it when you close out the show. Just click the name. Okay, I went to my I had to open up my YouTube. Wait, is this a new YouTube feature? This OXP? Oh, I thought you only got that when you're monetized. Hmm. Okay. Well, I said what I said. You a top fan. That's what YouTube say. And then it's Javar, Heal and Heal and somebody, Cherokee the boss, Triple. Well, but all right, y'all. Deuces. I see y'all when I see y'all. Good night.